Right. Hello, and thank you for joining the Novel Creature Network. I'm your host, Montrez, and I'm here to connect you with all your favorite blurs and BIPOC creators. And today I have with me the amazing and dynamic Audra Russell, who is the host of the Between the Reads podcast and the voice of the Black indie author community. So thank you so much for being live with us today, taking time out of your schedule to join us. And I could talk about your story and read your bio, but we're here to hear from you. We want to hear all the details, all the goodness, and what you're doing, how you got started, what you're up to now, and how we can support and celebrate all the amazing things you've got going on. So, again, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Montrez. I really appreciate you sharing this space with me. It's not often that I am in the interview seat. I'm usually the interviewer.
Yes.
So it's nice to get to talk about my podcast. I realize that I need to be doing more of getting out there and letting people know about the podcast. So when you came with this opportunity, I jumped on it. It was wonderful to be asked. So, Between the Reads, how did it get started? Well, I'm an avid reader, and I was kind of tired of being let down by all the traditionally published books that won all these, the Pulitzer Prize and the Booker Man Award and all of these things, and they were never living up to their expectations. So a friend of mine said, "Hey, I have this indie book for you." And I was familiar with, indie publishing because at that time I was still in the process of trying to get my own book published traditionally, and that wasn't working. So I went to go get it, started researching self-publishing. So I knew about it. And when I read this book, I reached out to the author and we just started chatting through DMs. And I was just like giving her a hard time about the ending. And we just like developed this friendship, and we were just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I said, wouldn't it be great if there was like a podcast where we did this? And she said, do it. And that was in like November. So I spent all of December of 2019 just researching and putting the platform together, getting the website together, just doing the research on how to start a podcast, all that, what kind of equipment to use, everything. And then January 20th of 2020, the first episode aired, and I was a little scared because I was like, I had looked, I was like, there's lots of book podcasts out here, like lots, there's not as many Black ones. There are a lot of Black ones, but when you look at the whole scope of how many millions of podcasts are out there, the number of Black book podcasts is small in comparison. I'm like, but who's going to listen to me? Like, I'm just an average reader, right? But then March hits and the whole world goes into a pandemic and quarantines. And Between the Reads really kind of, I won't say it exploded, but it grew quickly. I went from having no followers to, every month getting 10, 15, 20 followers. I was up to a few hundred, and then by the second year I was up to, almost 1,000. And then that second year, it really started gaining that steam. So I was up to 2,000, and now I'm almost at 3,000.
Yes.
But then I was nervous because I was like, well, maybe it's a fluke because, people were quarantining. They were looking for ways to spend their time. Maybe Between the Reads will just fizzle out after that. But here we are, 3 years later, the world's opened back up. And I have gone from, in the beginning, reaching out to everybody to be on the show, to almost all of my guests now have reached out to me, either themselves or through an agent, and both traditionally and indie published. And that's how Between the Reads got started, because I really felt like Black indie authors needed a place to shine, where they could just share their story and not have to explain their culture and just being Black. They could just talk about their stories. And I also wanted a place where both Black, indie, and traditionally published authors could prove to the literary world that we were more than just urban fiction. No shade to urban fiction. It's, you
Mhm.
know, it's a genre just like all the other, but when the world looks at Black authors, they think it's urban fiction and romance, and they don't see beyond those two things. So I
Yes.
really saw this platform as a way to show everybody, Black, white, whatever, that we are in all the genres. We're in nonfiction, we're in science fiction, we're in romance, we're in urban fiction, we're in
Yes.
historical fiction, we're in fantasy, we're in, steampunk, we're in graphic novels. We're there. We're everywhere. And it's amazing to me that people don't know that,
Mhm.
especially since we've been in science fiction. W.E.B. Du Bois wrote The Comet, which was science
Yes.
fiction,
Yes.
way back in what, the late 1800s or early 1900s that he released that. So how is it that people can't understand? I mean, we even have, slave journals. Like when I was reading Diary of Anne Frank when I was in high school, nobody told me that incidents in the life of a slave girl was a narrative that I could be reading in addition to, Anne Frank. So we've been here. We've been writing stories.
Exactly. And you said so many wonderful things that I want to highlight. So before we go any further, I do want to give a shout out to those of you who are live with us. So thank you, Timothy, for being here.
Hi, Timothy.
And thank you, Miss Janine, for being here.
Hi,
Um,
Janine.
for supporting us live, and for everyone who's rolling in. And to those of you who will be viewing later, thank you. But you touched on so many things that I just we have to talk about it. Number one, you said when you were first starting your podcast, who's
Mhm,
going to want to listen to me?
mhm,
Who's going to want? And I think that that's so worth talking about, because as creatives, or even when we're putting together business ideas or anything worthwhile pursuing, oftentimes there's a lot of, I'm just this average person, who's going to want
mhm,
to listen to what I have to say?
mhm,
Meanwhile, if any of you caught my face when she was saying that, I like, she said that a lot of people now are reaching out. You said that a lot of people are reaching out asking you for interviews. Well, the way
mhm,
I met you, you reached out to ask me to be on your show.
mhm,
And I didn't think that I could reach out and ask. I didn't think you would want me on your show. So, like I said, there's this thing that we deal with,
mhm,
where I think we're constantly devaluing or not seeing the worth of the vision and the skills and the talent that we have.
yeah,
And so I just want to encourage anybody who's watching this,
mhm,
and for future episodes, this is why I'm doing this,
mhm,
because you have something in you that you shouldn't discount. And the beauty of your story, Audra, you saw a need, you saw a vacancy,
mhm,
and you're filling that. You're filling that void with your show.
mhm,
Pretty much, if I want to, like, if there's, I know certain authors and different things, but whenever people ask for recommendations, particularly in the Black indie or just Black authors in general, I
mhm.
always like to refer them to your show and to your platform,
Mm, thank you.
because I'm finding a lot of new authors and a lot of things, even historically, that I didn't know. So,
Mhm.
can you talk a little bit about that as well? Because you're doing more, and the podcast is huge. First of all, my mind is racing. I'm excited, but let's train. Can you tell us where, for viewers who are interested in finding more on Black indie authors and supporting your show, where can they find it? How often do you run?
My shows post usually every Tuesday, almost every Tuesday of the month. Um, which is funny because it originally started out being I was going to be a bi-weekly, and now pretty much almost every week. There might be a week where I don't have a show, or sometimes there's a family emergency where I just had a stint where I couldn't do anything. But every Tuesday they post. You can go to betweenthereads.com, which is my website, and You can click on any episode. And the wonderful thing is, on each episode page, there is the YouTube link. But if you prefer to listen and not watch, there are links to different podcast players on that page as well. So you can, from one page, you can grab the episode however you want to do, whether you want to view or whether you want to listen. And you can, every Tuesday, I always at Between the Reads podcast on Instagram and at Read It Black to Me on Twitter, I always post the sound bites to let people know, hey, there's a new episode. So follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. I'm on Threads as well, Between the Reads podcast. And I always drop, hey, there's a new episode. But you can subscribe. I'm on everything pretty much except Spotify. I removed it from Spotify. That's a whole nother story. But almost everything out there, I'm there, so you can subscribe and you'll get a notification every time a show comes up.
Definitely. So guys, please, this is one of the platforms that I really love and enjoy. And you always learn so much. And I want to say that, you have me as a guest on your show.
Yes.
And, I'm always about giving people their flowers. And the thing about your podcast, your platform, is that you don't know how much you touched just my life. And just by asking me to interview, so many opportunities came out of that. And it
Really?
also kind of it kind of helps kind of boost your and empower you a little bit to know that you have people out there who want and support what you do. And so I'll try to also include links to our interview because she was so amazing. And so I knew that when I started this, that I had to have you on
Oh,
because, any way to kind of spread what you're doing, we need that as Black indie authors and just Black authors in general. A lot of times we're told, hey, your voice doesn't matter, or we only need so many of you talking about this, and you've shown by what you're doing how important, our voices are. And so, again, I want to thank you for that. But I also want to talk about, some of the other things that you have attached to Between the Reads, because you have so many wonderful resources and tools that just help readers in general and authors to discover more about present but also past voices who have been in the Black community contributing to literature and other dynamics, letting their voices out.
Mhm.
You mentioned briefly Read It Black to Me. Can you talk
Mhm.
about that?
Yeah. So Read It Black to Me kind of came out of Between the Reads. The first year that I did Between the Reads, two things came out: Black Indie Author Week
Yes.
and Read It Black to Me. Black Indie Author Week has run every year except this year because my mom was in the hospital, and so I had to postpone it. I'm thinking about doing it sometime later this year. But Read It Black to Me also came out of that. And readitblacktome.com is actually a website that I have as well. And I interview Black indie authors and create it as a blog post to let people know more about authors. I also interview Black bookstores,
Yes.
and just anybody that's kind of related to the Black bookish space. That is where readitblacktome.com comes in. I haven't interviewed guests as of late, just because I don't know. I'm trying to maybe restructure that because I feel like people aren't really taking that in as much as they take in the podcast, but all of the interviews are still there. And I'm still looking for ways to keep that site active. Like one page that I created on readitblacktome.com now is called From Page to Pod. And on that page, I put all of the books that I've read during the year, whether it's for Between the Reads or Staying on Code or First Fridays, which I do with Demetrius Frazier of Resist Booksellers. So people can see all the books that I'm reading during the year. And, it's a way to make people aware of books that are out there. And like I said, I have the blog, which has lots and lots and lots of interviews of Black indie authors where I just ask them questions about how they got started, about their books, and just different things related to being a Black indie author, their trials, the struggles, all that world encompasses. So that kind of grew out of an episode that I did with Chelsea, who's my good friend from Written in Melanin. Read
Yes.
It Black to Me came out of that an original episode that she did, that she and I did together a long time ago. It was like a 2-hour episode, and Read It Black to Me literally came out of that. And I just decided to grab that URL, and then it's evolving over time, but it's really another space. It's an extension of Between the Reads. And then I have Black Indie Author Week,
Yes. Talk about that.
which is where every year, usually the week leading up to Juneteenth, I will post, I will have a theme, and then every day I will post authors and Black businesses that are related to the theme of it. And every evening I will have a different Black indie author on, or a Black, like last year I had a Black trademark lawyer on. So every night it's a different interview on IG Live related to whatever the theme is. And the whole point of it is, and to let people know about Black indie authors, about services that Black indie authors can use, about bookstores where Black indie authors can, approach to, inquire about getting their books there. So it's really a whole week of celebrating us doing our own thing and not depending on traditional publishing to tell our stories.
Definitely. And I want to draw attention to that, because not only are you providing exposure and support, like helping authors share their works, but you're also providing resources. And not
Mhm.
only that, you're drawing attention to those resources and those businesses
Mhm.
that people probably don't know about. And so it's just an amazing community that you're building
Thank
and
you.
that you're helping to support. I highly recommend authors, please follow, contact, connect with Audra, because there's so much you can learn, and there's just so much, like, it's synergy every time.
Mhm.
I watched you and Chelsea, and for those of you who didn't catch our interview last week, I did interview CM Lockhart, aka Chelsea
Mhm.
Lockhart, who's the author of We Are the Origin, and she has an upcoming release, so check that out.
Mhm.
Um, there's so much you guys do that really helps to build, but also hold the Black community accountable for.
Mhm.
It's not just you give us that necessary love in the community,
Mhm. Mhm.
support, the encouragement, and the accountability aspect. And I think that's so important. Um, I noticed on your platform you talk a lot about like history
Mhm.
and different things like that. Can
Mhm.
you tell us some of the aspects of the historical books that you've found, or authors and different things that you've learned
Yeah,
about?
one author in particular that I just interviewed, that interview will be dropping on Tuesday. Her name is Jen Hammond, and she reached out to me through her agent, and she wrote this book called Returning the Bones.
Mhm.
And it is a historical fiction book about her actual family, about her Aunt Bibi and her family, her grandfather in Bryan, Texas. Their family started off, their lineage is, they are there's the white Hamiltons, as in Alexander Hamilton, the president, and there are the black Hamiltons. And her family has descended from that line. And the story goes through that her family came from the plantation, and there was a white man who couldn't have children with his white wife. And so there was a woman named Lucy who was enslaved, and he put her on this land, built her a house, had children with her, and actually educated them and
Wow.
gave them land. And this story is about that family line. And it was just amazing to read, because I'm reading this and it's historical fiction. But as I'm talking to her, she says, these are things that happened. They had wealth. He had a hospital. He had a veterinary practice. When they didn't want to sell him wood to build homes, he made his own wood business. I mean, he had so many businesses, because every time they would tell him no, he had the wealth to just go and start his own business.
Mhm.
And so this interview is just really powerful, because it's kind of like Black Wall Street in Bryan, Texas.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and her family is a part of that. I'm never good for recalling things that are like too far back. My brain just doesn't hold stuff. I guess because I read, every week, my brain is like, all right, you read it, dump it, get ready for the next thing. But I did have another author on who was local, and her story was vivid, and it was about the historical fiction about the lead poisoning that happened here in Baltimore and how it affected the children here, and all of the things that happened with that. So that's another one that I can think of off the top of my head. So they're just historical stories about the triumphs and the challenges that we face as Black people in this country.
Definitely. And I think so. I think it's definitely important to draw in. Not only are you, just featuring, about books, but you can learn so much history and so many things about our culture that often aren't talked about. I mean, they're trying to erase a lot of historical findings and evidence,
Mhm.
just things that we know it's
Right.
being swept under the rug. And so I highly encourage anyone who's watching this, if you want to learn more about Black literature, Black history, Black culture, Black everything, please tune in to Audra Russell's podcast and everything she has going on. Now, we've talked a lot about kind of the things that, the people that you feature.
Mhm.
But I kind of want to, because as somebody who's kind of a fan of your content, and
Mhm.
then for other viewers who see your content, um, oftentimes we see the success and the amazingness that you've got going on right now, and it's inspiring. But I think sometimes we can find inspiration kind of from the challenges you've had and
Mm.
some of the history of how your story started.
Mhm.
So, why a podcast? Why did you choose to start a podcast and not something else? There's so many other forms of medium.
I think it all goes back to the fact my undergraduate degree from Hampton is in broadcast journalism. And when I transferred, because I went to community college first and then transferred to Hampton because my dad worked at community college. So we couldn't afford to send me all 4 years. So went for free to community college, transferred to Hampton, wanted to be in radio. When I transferred there, um, because I was a junior, I had missed out on those first 2 years. And so I missed out on kind of the whole introduction to radio. And I went to the radio station to try out. And um, the person that ran the radio, he was like, all right, sit down and do this. And he was assuming I had already, been there. And I was like, well, I'm a transfer student, so I don't know anything about the board. I don't know anything about radio. And he was like, well, just sit down and do it. And I just got up and left because I was intimidated. And this is my
Yeah.
first time away from home. And I'm outgoing, but also shy. And I just ran away, and I threw away any, dreams of having radio. And I just focused on television. And my goal, one of my goals was that there was a show called Like It Is by Gil Noble when I was in New Jersey. It ran for almost 40 years, I think. And he had a talk show about Black issues in the community.
Mhm.
And I wanted to do something like that. And then Oprah came along with her talk show. And then anytime I said I wanted to have talk show, people were like, oh, like Oprah. I'm like, no, I wanted to have this talk show before Oprah. I want to be like Gil Noble, and they're like, it's if you weren't into those types of shows, some people would be like, Gil, who? Like, he was the first Black person to have a long-standing running, you know,
Wow.
major network show. So I'm like, no, I want to be like Gil Noble.
See, I'm
And
learning right here. I have to look
so
him up.
yeah, he has it's hard to find now. I have a copy of it, but he has a book that he wrote about his journey called Black Was the Color of My TV Tube.
Wow.
And I read that back when I was before I was in college, I think. And so I wanted to do that. And I just kind of put it on the shelf because when I graduated from undergrad, the broadcast journalism is one of the biggest majors. It was just heavily saturated. And I worked behind the scenes. I had the internships when I was in college, did all the right things, made all the right connections, still couldn't find a job, just ended up going into higher ed. But, this was a dream that I had. And so when I had this opportunity to interview this first person for a pod, I don't know what made me just say, I just want to do a podcast. I really don't know what made me say it. It was just something that just dropped into my spirit. I started doing it. And the thing is, every single author, including the first one that I had on the show, every time I did a show, they would say, how long have you been doing this? And I'd say, I just started. And it's like I knew instinctually, I knew I needed to have this intro. I knew I needed to do this. I needed to have music at the beginning and at the end. And, I would have these questions, and I had my note cards. I bought note cards ahead of. Now, these were not things that I learned when I was doing my research to put the podcast together. That stuff wasn't there. That was just stuff that I somehow innately knew. And that's why I feel like this was just something I was called to do. And it's just dusting off that dream of having a talk show and addressing issues of the Black community. And this year I started Staying on Code, which is my second podcast, which is nonfiction. It examines Black American life through the lens of nonfiction books. And I just published a 7th episode. It's a little heavy. I started in January, went to May, took a break, because reading about our history you have to kind of protect your mental health with that.
It can be a lot.
Yeah. So, but I really don't know what made me say start a podcast other than just talking to that author. I don't know why I said start a podcast with her and not a blog. It just hit because I never listened to podcasts before that time.
Wow.
No. So it was just, I feel like it was just the ancestors, or maybe it was that young girl in me that was like, it's a lot easier to do things now than it was back then. Because, the internet was not a thing when I was in college. God,
and you are a natural. You are such a natural.
Thank you.
Like, guys, when you check out like the production of it, like just the quality. I mean, if you can look in the background, in her background right there, you see the Between the Reads logo.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just high quality, amazing content, and no one would ever know. No one would ever know. But I think it's important, something you said, dust off that dream. So guys, if you've been sitting with a dream, whatever it may be, and if you still think about it, there's a reason.
Yeah.
So dust it off. Let this be a sign to dust that off and give it a try.
Yep.
Give it another try.
Yeah. And do it for you, because if you do it for the numbers, I mean, some weeks, like I had a stretch of weeks where I was getting 200 plus downloads for Between the Reads. Then last week I got 45.
Wow.
Because Buzzsprout sends you, an email every Monday letting you know. And it's like, okay, but then I also just hit 10,000 downloads.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. But, then there are other people who hit 10,000 downloads in their first few months, people that started their podcast the same time I did. So if you compare yourself to other podcasts, or if you go just strictly by the numbers, you're going to get discouraged. I have to I'm still learning to just take those numbers in stride. I celebrate it when it's good. When it's not good, I don't know why the numbers aren't high sometimes. I don't know what drives that. And I really don't care to find out, because I just enjoy what I do. I'm passionate about sharing the word about Black authors. And I have to remember that when I see other podcasts that are really about nonsense, just blowing up all over the place, and it's just like, no shade to them. I guess people want to just have podcasts about nothing. Okay, fine. But, I'm here to let people know about Black authors. And with my other podcast, I'm here to let people know about what it's like to live in America as a Black person. And, of course, I'm not just talking to Black people. That podcast is for people who are not Black, to help them understand us and our specific journey in this country, from the 1600s to the present. But, you have to do it because it's what you want to do. And if you're looking for accolades, if you're looking for validation, if you're looking for awards, you're going to be disappointed. I've been nominated for a few awards last year and the year before. I did not win. Yes, it stung, but I was nominated. So that's all I can say. But I have to focus on, it's just my passion. It's what I want to do.
And I think passion is so important. A lot of times it takes the work out of it. I remember last year, you had talked about wanting to build your own studio. Can you talk about that experience? And is that still going on? Because that's something I definitely want to bring up so we can support that. We need that.
Yes. I had originally had a goal of $50,000. There was this specific company that builds studio sheds. I did not anywhere near make that mark. I raised about $1,500. So what I did with that first $1,500 was cleared the space, because I'm a farmer, so I had a garden cage and all that, and it was kind of like time to let that go. So I used that first set of money to clear out the space and get it all ready, and that took up almost all of that money. So what I've been doing is every month with the Patreon money that I get, which I don't get very much, I get about 50 something dollars a month, which I'm thankful for. Thank you for everybody's supports. I just put it in my savings account, my business savings account. But, it's not going to accumulate quickly enough, because even a basic, like buying an Amish built shed and turning it into a studio is going to be somewhere between $7,000 and $10,000. So it's going to take me a long time to save up money for my Patreon to do that. So the dream is still there. I'm still stacking my Patreon away every month. And, I'm working towards that, because right now I'm in my closet. There are literally clothes there, shoes here. I put a poster here, and I put, my a blind up behind me, and I just had a bunch of my logo printed to try and give it a little bit more, niceness to it, to make it feel more like a studio. If you look at some of my earlier, because this is the first year that I started doing video for the podcast. Prior to 2023, it was all audio. And I just had a gray sheet that I hung here. And then I said, I got to make this a little better. So I got a blind, a shade, pulled it down, put the logo all over it. And then I have my poster here. And, but I really would like to get into a studio, because one is hot in here. And I have hot flashes for menopause. So I have my fan going all the time. And I'm always doing this because I'm hot, and plus there are more things that I would like to do. There's so much that I have written down in my business plan for, promotional episodes for books, like commercials for books, and things that I want to do that really require a small studio space. Yeah. And I just don't have the money to go and rent time in a studio, because that's expensive. So yes. I want my own studio. So yeah, I'm still working on that. I'm just stacking away my Patreon money as it comes in, but it's going to be a while before I can actually, get that, because I have to get the shed. I have to get it delivered. I have to get it, customized to be a studio, insulate it, put electricity in it, put, a mini split that does AC and heat, so I can be out there in the winter and the summer and all of that. And, it's not going to be cheap to do. So I just have to, keep stacking the money away, and eventually I'll get there.
Sorry, guys, having some technical difficulties here. You have those hidden browsers that just pop up and
yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I think it's important to talk about, but I'm so grateful for that you open up and talk about these things, because these are the things that when we hear the really, like how crisp your audio sounds, how great like your backdrops look. I mean, because when we go on your platform, from your website to just everything you've got going on, people can't see the behind the scenes things, that are going on. And I think a lot of times, even in our own endeavors, you look at, you talked about it briefly, comparison. You look at how other people, they have these shining platforms, they have all these people following and liking things. And then you're trying to build your dream from stage one. And, there's so much that goes into that. Like just listening to you talk about all that goes into the production of a podcast and how much money it takes. And I noticed something. So again, I want to talk about your passion and just give you hats off for that, because you said you're a gardener, but you cleared that space. You cleared that space to make room for this dream here. Yeah. And so just to like hear the sacrifice and the time and the money and the patience that it takes, I have to highlight that. So if you're out there and you want to do these things and they look big, do them scared, do one step at a time. And then when you can and where you can, support your fellow creatives. Ms. Audra, I definitely think that your shed is coming. Your studio is coming.
I hope so.
There's no way that you can support and do all the things, all the amazing things that you're doing for our community, and it not happen. It needs to happen.
It needs to, because I'm hot in here.
So shout out to Girly Geek. She is here supporting. She said,
Hi.
and she said, "What about a portable studio booth from Amazon?" Oh,
Girl, what?
yeah. What is
I need to look that up.
yeah.
I need to look that up.
Yeah.
Because if there's something, I will be looking that. Thank you, Girly Geek.
Yeah.
Because if I can find something this, I'm close to having about half of that right now, and I could, I definitely get some. I was just trying to look for something. I'll look into it because I really want something that's, has room for me. My dream is I have one side that's like where I can shoot video, and then the other side is where I do my interviews. So if I can make something like that work, I absolutely will look into it.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned your Patreon. So
Mm-hmm.
in our show notes, we'll have a link to um, all of her goodness. Okay.
Okay.
Podcast, everything. And if there's something missing, let me know, or something extra you want to add.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely support. The Patreon is amazing. You are supporting for like as little as what, $5?
Yeah. I
Like
have two tiers, $5 and $10. That's it.
that's like 2 cups of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So if you love Starbucks and you love getting the go ahead and support this amazing platform here.
Yeah.
It's so worth it.
And if you
It's
want to do like a one time, you don't want to do monthly, I'm on Ko-Fi as well. So I'll give you the link for that, because then
yes,
you could
please.
you can do, and Ko-Fi is like, it starts off as little as $3, but you can put any amount that you want in there.
Yes,
So, yeah, that's there too, because
you are.
I
Yeah.
have so much I want to do, and it's just, I need the space to do it. So
And the impact of what you're already doing is just so amazing.
thank
I
you.
mean, like you've dropped a couple of names here already from like history and from our culture that I've never heard of. And
Oh,
so this is important, guys. Please, like, if you want to learn, like, if you want to add more books to your TBR, fiction, nonfiction, and just get all the Black Indian traditional goodness, this is the place to go.
thank
I mean,
you.
just amazing quality, and you get passion and that love just kind of rolls off. You can feel it through the audio clips. You can see it in the visuals. It's
Thank
just
you.
top tier goodness here, guys.
Thank
And so
you.
it's, oh, yes, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop them here. Let me see here. Question from Girly Geek. Why do you think BIPOC LGBTQ authors have a hard time reaching their audience?
Ooh, I don't know. I'm not the person to ask those kinds of questions. I wish that I could understand why, audiences respond or don't respond. Maybe the research, I would say you just have to do the research. You have to figure out um where your book fits, and where the people that are reading your book are gathering, and then go there. And I think probably one thing that I will say authors in general do um is, it's always buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. And if you want to reach people and you want them to read your stories, you have to do more than that. Just be real. Show them the struggles that you face as a member of the BIPOC LGBTIQ community. You know, talk about issues that are happening right now in the news, and how it relates to your book. Because I think that's the one thing that I do see with a lot of authors, that it's just like, buy my book. Like,
Yeah.
even with me, I have expanded. I talk about episodes on my page, but I also now post funny stories, funny things that happen, and I get a lot of people that react to that, and send me things in my DM. And so you have to just, it's like a community, right? So if you were sitting around talking to people, you would talk about your life, you would talk about things that are going on, you would just share funny stories. And you have to remember to do that part of it too. It's not just about buy my book. Tell me why I should buy your book. Tell me why I should read your story. So that's where I would say to begin.
Definitely.
If you're having a hard time reaching, it's probably because you're not maybe not doing enough of the research to figure out where they are and how you can genuinely connect with them.
Definitely. And I think too, again, I think it goes back to how people limit, there's kind of like that scarcity mentality, like,
Mhm.
well, there's already these people here. They're not going to want to hear me.
Mhm.
But your
Mhm.
experience is so unique.
Mhm.
And just looking at, all the representation you have BIPOC, what does that stand for? Black,
Mhm.
Indigenous, people of color. What
Mhm.
does the LGBTQI stand for?
Mhm.
So you kind of have a segment right there. You know who you can kind of attach. What are the
Mhm.
issues and the
Mhm.
things that, you address with your work that
Mhm.
you can connect with, that people can understand?
Mhm.
Simply just talking about the things you're passionate about can help
Mhm.
you find your people.
Yep.
Uh,
Absolutely.
so I'd say start with what you're passionate about. Don't look
Mhm.
at, a lot of times when we're trying to market, we look at those things like platform,
Mhm.
metrics. Just start as a person. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm just a person with this book. This is what it's about. And you'll find your people. It may take time.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
takes time to build anything worthwhile, and honestly, sometimes I feel like that's the best thing
Yeah.
because you get an organic following. But
Mhm.
there is something on that you touched that I think is also important too. You have to do the research, like
Mhm.
Audra is saying, you have to do that research. You don't just want to throw your book at anybody.
Mhm.
You have a special message. Anything
Mhm.
that has your voice, that has the things that you're concerned about, you want to find the right home. Like, I'm
Mhm.
not going to go, like, if I'm not a Black indie author, or I'm not, I don't talk about Black culture, I may not go to Audra's podcast,
Mhm.
especially if she's not looking for books outside of that.
Mhm.
I think you've had people come to you that weren't,
Girl.
so just things like that. There are resources, there's people who want and need what you have to say.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
and I had an author on my show once who talked. Her name is Janae,
mhm,
and she talked about um, you are selling yourself first
yep,
and your book second.
yep,
So when you're reaching out, don't say I'm looking for places to sell my book, to let people know about my book.
mhm,
Become a member of a community because you want to become a part of that
right,
community. Get involved in the conversations in that community, and there will be organically conversations will come up and opportunities for you to talk about your book.
organic, and that's important. The organic is so important.
Mm-hmm.
So just
Absolutely.
keep going. You'll be able to get there.
Mm-hmm.
People who want what you have to offer. Ooh,
Absolutely.
we've got a couple questions. Let's see.
Do
Um,
I have a favorite book that I read? Hi, Raymond. A favorite book that I read this year. Oh gosh. I would think that Returning the Bones that I just read, that I'm going to be posting on Tuesday, is probably one of my favorites. Half American was actually very, 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 very good. Nonfiction, but so good. Um, Black Was the Ink is another one, historical fiction, by Michelle Coles. Loved that book. I've read it 3 times this year so far. Um, I Those are the ones that stick out to me um, the most right now. A book that I did not read this year, but that you actually told me about, Raymond, was Trees by Percival Everett. He is a wonderful, wonderful author that I had never heard of before reading Trees, and then I went out and bought a bunch of his books. So that's a book that I read last year that I just really loved. But off the top of my head, those are the ones that come to me.
awesome. Yeah. So just follow her in general because she's got a lot of amazing finds and books, and
Mhm.
anything that I know you don't like the Oprah comparison because that's not who you are, but I think you kind of have that, like, you have that stamp in our community where, like, if you recommend it, I want to read it, or I want to
Oh,
recommend it.
thank you.
So definitely write those books down. And here's some other important elements that some of our viewers brought up. Going back to the previous question, like, why is it hard to reach your audience? This right here, the algorithms, the way that and I've heard people say
Those
that
algorithms are biased as hell, y'all. They really, really are.
I've actually seen where people have talked about how they're not um, friendly for diverse audiences, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's so important to build kind of like your own platform that's not algorithm based. So like your websites,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. If you can get groups. But yeah, that's very true. Even
Yeah.
for like big creators that have like hundreds of thousands of followers, they have
Mm-hmm.
said that the algorithm is a problem.
Yeah. It mutes certain subjects and things. Yeah.
Janine, another very good point. Like sometimes, yeah,
BIPOC characters are treated harsher than oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Just books in general by BIPOC authors are so scrutinized, and then if one book doesn't do well, they say, oh, well, then you're done, and they don't do that with white authors.
exactly. And so, Girly Geek, I think the algorithm is why people are having a hard time because there's people I follow, their content doesn't always. And if you look at your metrics, like on IG and stuff, it'll tell you, like, hey, we're only showing this to like, or only 10% of your followers are seeing this. So
Mm.
that's just something to,
Add a child because of your
yeah.
wreck. I can't wait to start. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm telling you, Audra is the place. Her and CM Lockhart, Chelsea Lockhart, they often collaborate and do things together.
Yes.
They'll keep you laughing, they'll keep you informed, they'll keep you accountable, and they'll give you great reads to consider and to check out.
Absolutely.
Oh wow, guys, thanks for all the comments. This is amazing.
Fiction or nonfiction book I'm looking forward to reading at the end of 2023? Gosh, I have so many books on my TBR.
Great.
There is one that I just pre-ordered from Resist Booksellers, called Black AF History, I think is what it's called. Um, I'll make a post about it on Read It Black to Me, but it's a book that's coming out, I think, in September, by this Black man who's writing about Black history from our perspective and saying that he's the summary said that American history is white history, and
Mhm.
he's talking about our history here even before the 1600s, all the way to present. So I'll post about it, but it's like if you put in Black AF history, I think that's
Mhm.
what it's called. I just pre-ordered it today. I'm looking forward to reading that. But there's so many books. There's so many books, Timothy. My TBR is like
Yeah, let's see. Okay, wait a minute. Let's see. There
there.
it is.
See, Raymond for the win. Raymond he will always have the answer whenever we are in IG lives and Raymond is there. He will always have the answer for you. Black AF History: The Unwhitewashed Story of America by Michael Harry. Yes, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
So, guys, if you are looking for, and this is one of the things that you guys have stated, there's no reason why you can't find, these amazing, like if you're looking for more diverse books, particularly in the Black community,
Mm-hmm.
there are so many resources, and this is one of them. Please follow, support, promote, invest
Thank
in
you.
Between the Reads podcast. If you love Black authors, Black indie, Black traditional, support Between the Reads podcast because she gives that love back so much.
Thank
Now,
you.
again, thank you to all of our viewers, both who are live with us. Special shout out to you and to everyone who will be viewing later. And Audra, thank you so much for being on. But
Thank you for having me.
before I let you go, this is going to be a tradition here.
Okay.
Give us a bit of blur inspiration, something, a mantra, a saying, something that our viewers can take with them throughout this
Mm.
week and whenever they watch.
Let me think. You put me on the spot, Montrez.
I mean, you've already said so many amazing things like dust your dream off. So, guys, you can really find Blur Inspiration all throughout. And for those who don't know, Blur Inspiration is just Black nerd inspiration.
Yes.
It's what
It truly is never too late to start your dream. And you do not have to have a lot to start it. When I started in this podcast, in this closet, I was this was before I had a desk in here. I was sitting on the floor with my laptop on some shoe boxes that were stacked up. And I had the laptop and my mic. And that was it. I didn't even have my extra lamp because I didn't need it because it was just audio. So the saying, bloom where you were planted, start where you are with what you have and don't worry about being perfect. Just start and get it out there, whatever it is. And it will grow naturally. And as you put forth the effort, I truly believe that the universe will meet you in kind and make opportunities for you. So start where you are, however small, with what you have, and go from there. Because you can always expand upon and fix when you create, but you can't expand upon or fix if you don't create anything.
Yes.
It's never too late. I'm going to be 53 in 10 days, and I just started my podcast 3 years ago at 50. It's never too late.
It's awesome. Happy early birthday. And
Thank
yes, I love that. I'm getting, how you get those little butterflies, those feels.
Yes.
Guys, please follow Audra, support everything she's got going on. Links will be in the show notes. And if you have any questions, for those who will be viewing later, send them. You can post them and I'll share them. And then just go ahead and follow everything she does. It's just chef's kiss excellence.
Thank you.
And you'll walk away with more books on your TBR.
You will. You will definitely walk away with more books on your TBR. Absolutely.
And more knowledge. Like I said, you've been dropping gems all through this show. So thank you for your time. Thank you so much for being here on the Novel Creature Network. And
thank you, Montrez. Thank you for having me. And thank you for this space that you created for us.
Hey, I have to say it's inspired by great minds before me, like Between the Reads. So thank you.
Thank you.
And getting some love here.
Thank you, Timothy.
And yes, Raymond, that was a word. Thank you,
Raymond.
Perfect word to leave on. So please support Audra. Is there anything that you have coming up that you want to talk about or let us know about?
Just the new episode coming on Tuesday with Between the Reads with Jen Hammond. It's an excellent episode. Please do not miss that. Thank you, Girly Geek. And the Staying on Code, a new episode that dropped yesterday on Half American. You can go to my Staying on Code Instagram page, or you can go to stayingoncode.black and catch that episode plus the other ones.
Definitely. So why don't you guys, after you leave off of Novel Creature Network, just go ahead, subscribe to her page now so you don't miss it. Because I promise you will. This right here is Novel Creature Network approved. Love everything. So thank you again for tuning in, and thank you, Miss Audra. We will be back in September for a new month of interviews and features. Until then, check out the Novel Creature Book Club. Subscribe here so you never miss interviews, and have a great Saturday, everyone.
Bye-bye, y'all. Thanks for coming.